So this learn the Aikido like a pro, so you can express Aikido like an artist, is a paraphrase from a pretty well-known quote from Pablo Picasso. And the Picasso quote is learn the rules like a pro, so you can break the rules like an artist. And when I hit that, it was like getting hit between the eyes. I just realized that's the essence of everything we're doing in Aikido. And Aikido, sure, it's a martial art. It's martial. It's technical. We can approach it in many ways, but it is an art. It is an art. It is an art. And arts, like all arts, have their rules, their styles, their systems, their guidelines, their injunctions, their do's and don'ts, and everything. Every art has rules. But let's not forget that every art is an art. And there's a creative expression that's involved in that art. And Pablo Picasso kind of captured this in his quote, learn the rules like a pro, so you can break the rules like an artist. And it might be good for you right now because just kind of check in. Do you feel that yourself, those of you that are watching, we have, right now there's 11 people on the Facebook Live, and there's people going to be watching after. Do you feel that you're more of a rules person? Or do you feel that you're more of an artist person? Do you feel that you're more of a rules person or an expressive person? Do you feel that you're more into discipline and control or into freedom and expression? Now, these are two opposite poles of a spectrum that's basically one spectrum. You can say two sides of the same coin. And I have a certain amount of creativity and expressiveness in it, and I have a lot of structure and rules that I like. And if I were to kind of just feel into myself, I would say I'm a little bit more on the rule side, but over the years I've developed a lot to be more 50-50. But my orientation was slightly leading towards the rules and structure. Now, so you can probably feel right there. Maybe if you guys are watching this, just write in the comments. Do you feel if you're a rules type, just write the rules. If rules or structure, write that in the comments. If you're a creative type, a flow type, an artist type, write that in the comments. Matthew Miranda, which one are you? Rules or art? Andy, which one are you? Rules or art? Brita, are you rules or art? We're all different, and every culture has a different expression of what it is as well. So what I want to do is just kind of stick with Pablo Picasso for just a moment. And if you think of Pablo Picasso, he revolutionized the art world. And if you have an image, Pablo Picasso, think of his art, boom. Daniel Palacios, he says, same as you, closer to rules. Cool, Daniel. Yeah, right, awesome. If you think of Pablo, if you just think of one of his paintings, or whatever he did. Eileen says, I like the challenge to express creativity through the rules. Nice. Andy says, indeed, which is probably somewhere both, I guess. I know Andy. He's like that. Rich Sims says, I love to know the rules, but oh, do I love them to go on to break them. Right on, Richard, the true rebel. So if you think of Pablo Picasso's art, if you just get an image of his art, it'll probably, Torben, it's a mix, right. Okay, I tell you what, Torben, because I know that you've been around for a while, you've been doing a lot of developmental practice. What were you when you were 20? What were you when you were 19? There might have been a rebellious period, but then when you kind of, let's say, as a teenager, we kind of break free. There's always a little bit of breaking the rules there. But when you settled into your adulthood, would you say that you were more on the rules side or more on the structure or more on the freedom and flow? Matthew Miranda likes to focus on the rules and let my spirit express the art. See, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful encapsulation, Matthew, of Pablo Picasso's quote. Who would have thought that Matthew Miranda is the next Pablo Picasso? I'm going to call you the Picasso of Aikido, Matthew. So what I want to do is I want to show. So if you think of a picture, one of the paintings of Pablo Picasso, you probably got an image of when this kind of where he deconstructed perspectives, and the eye is over here, and one eye's over there, and the ear, and then the nose is there, and the mouth, or the bull, and this is what when we think of Picasso, this is what we think of. But you may not know. I certainly didn't know. Right on, Matthew. I certainly didn't know that Picasso had a phase in his life where he wasn't doing that. That what we call Picasso, the genius of Picasso, awoke in him and began to be expressed to him at a certain point in his artistic career. Before that, he was a different artist. So I'm going to do a little bit of a screen share, and I want you guys to see early Picasso. This right here, these are pictures of early Picasso. Let's take this one right here. Oh, sorry, I need to go over here. Excuse me. Yeah, just give me a second. I'm gonna kind of zoom in on one, and look at that. Now that is it's a fantastic piece of art. Apparently, to be honest, I don't really know all of Picasso's history, but he mastered the classic styles. You know, look at his eyes. They're perfect. Look at the nose. It's perfect. The ears are right in place. Again, over here, it's beautiful art. You know, there's nothing strange about, or not strange. There's nothing multiple perspectives going on here with his art. I guess this one starts to kind of creep into, you know, the later styles that he had. But if you look at early Picasso, he was an art. A nose was a nose, and eyes were eyes. And let's see. Over here, you start to say, something's starting to change in Picasso. And then later, you know, this, I just Googled, here we go. And then we come to know Picasso as something like this. So I'm going to go back and turn off my screen share. So early on, Picasso spent many, 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 many hours and hours and hours and hours of learning the rules like a pro. If my history is correct, I think his father influenced, or he had artists that were in his family, and he copied the classics, and he learned them all really well. And at some point in his career, forgive me, I'm not a Picasso historian, but he just, boom, he exploded into being Pablo Picasso. So he learned the rules like a pro. He put in his time. And at a certain point, he broke the rules like an artist. Now, if you break the rules too soon, you never get the system. You never get the style. You never get the school. You don't become a container of what's being taught there. If you break them too early. If you hold on to the rules too late, you never become an artist. And that's the thing. Yeah. Now this lesson right here is a beautiful lesson for us. Is a beautiful lesson for us in Aikido. Because, learn Aikido like a pro, to express Aikido like an artist is really that's our goal. And ironically, when we learn Aikido like a pro, it's really, the goal is to become better and better and better, and learn the next style and learn the technique and perfect that one and polish and polish and polish and polish and sharpen and sharpen and sharpen and sharpen. Many of you may know the metaphor, the kind of samurai metaphor that's used for our martial arts training, the metaphor that's used for Budo. Matthew, give me a thumbs up if you know this. It's that you and I, when we're training in Aikido, we're like a sword, a Japanese katana that's being forged. They take a piece of raw iron, yeah, and when you and I walk into the dojo, we're like that lump, that raw iron. They put it in the fire and they heat it up, heat it, like intense heat until it becomes soft and malleable. Soft and malleable, soft and malleable. When we go into the dojo, we got our bad habits, we got our bodies, we got our all kinds of traps and locks and block-ups in our body, and our the way that we see the world, and we kind of go in as a fixed ego. And the practice of the art, as it goes in more and more, it's like heating us up, and it softens us up. It makes us more malleable. If you're an Aikido teacher, you know what it's like to work with a malleable student. Malleable means flexible. I'm sure, looks like everybody here is an English speaker, and I think malleable is even a French word, so I leave it's okay. It's like it softens you up. And as a teacher, it's so great to work with somebody you can shape them, you can help. And other people are a little bit, they're like solid iron. It's difficult to shape them, so it takes time. You got to heat them up, and then they become more malleable. But that's the first stage. So first you have to make the iron hot. Then the first stage in sharpening, in creating a sword, is the forging. You make it hot. You put it on an anvil. Excuse me. You put it on an anvil, and you shape it. How do you shape it? With a hammer. Boom. And you beat it. You beat it into shape. And you make it into this perfect kind of sword shape. Step number 1. It looks like a sword. It maybe even feels like a sword, but it's not a sword yet. It won't cut. Why? Because it's not sharp. So the next stage number 2, is, and these are the rules. These are the rules of sword making. There's no bypassing any of these stages. Rule number 2 is you sharpen. You begin to sharpen and sharpen and sharpen. So if it's a sword, it has to cut. So you sharpen, sharpen, sharpen. So think of your Aikido practice. The first year is all the way up to third kyu, second kyu. That's kind of the shaping period of your Aikido practice. So second kyu into first kyu into Shodan. That's the sharpening stage of your Aikido practice. You perfect that form, you learn those rules, and you become a pro. Formed, shaped, and sharpened. But then there's stage number 3. And stage number 3 in the sword making, of course, is polishing. Because a good sword, a good shaped sword is great when it's sharp and it'll cut. But it's not a piece of art yet. When you polish it, it starts to bring out the beauty, bring out that natural, the natural expression. Each piece of steel, forget for a moment that swords are used to cut off heads. Kind of, really, that's what swords are about. And personally, I'm not about that, but let's just kind of stick with the art side of the metaphor. And, as you polish the sword, then its character. Every sword has its character. Every sword has its soul. It begins to come out in the polishing stage. And that's the same thing with you and with me in our Aikido development. We spend some time, months, years, many hours, like Pablo Picasso, forging and sharpening. How do we do that? By following the rules and learning the rules like a pro. And then it's super important, and hopefully we'll have a teacher that will help us do that. Hopefully we'll have a school, a community of people that will help us do this. Hopefully we'll be in contact with a greater community of other teachers that can also impact that polish us. And we learn to express Aikido like an artist. So these are, now the way that I'm describing this is a very linear process, okay? It does not have to be linear. On my meditation for Aikidoka, we're in the middle of an 8-week course, and one of my students was just asking me, 2 days ago we had a Q&A call, and she was asking, it's a woman from Germany, she was asking about my approach. She says, how do I approach? When I get a beginner to come into the dojo, do I teach them kind of Ikkyo-Nikkyo basics? Or do I start to teach them more about connection, and how early do I start teaching connection? And it's a great question. And by the way, she's a teacher. She's one of the assistant teachers in the dojo that she's at, and she's a body worker. And she's been in Aikido many years, so she's clearly in the break the rules like an artist stage of her practice. Her teacher's Thorsten Schuh Sensei. If anybody know him, he's an amazing artist, and he's Aikido, and he's an amazing martial artist. He's the dude knows the rules. And he's at the point where he's given himself the permission to break the rules. What is the teachings against modern technique? Well, Liam, I don't know what you're talking about. So maybe you can, I'm going to keep telling my story, but if you can maybe clarify it, I'll try to answer your question. So this woman asked, what do I do? Now, what I used to do, I used to teach the rules from the beginning. Boom, boom, boom. And I would teach all the rules. And I was kind of in the sharp stage of myself. I was strongly forged from all my years in Japan. I was very sharp, and I went around teaching quite a bit, and I taught a lot the rules. But then I started to understand that people, once they get the rules, they actually don't need more rules. They need more art. So I started to teach more about the art. And I started to teach more about the inner principles. I started to teach more about connection and centering and listening and takemusu aiki, or forget takemusu aiki, awase. What is the essence of what we're trying to do is blend. So there shouldn't be, we want to look for any type of friction. We want to look for any type of bumping or bouncing of boundaries. We want this thing to be smooth and easy and yes, all the way through the technique. Takemusu aiki is pure artistic expression. So, to answer the question that I was asked by Aneta, when I teach a beginner's class, for example, it might be a 4-week beginner's class. Sometimes it's an 8-week beginner class. But I'll teach them a couple of techniques. I teach them how to fall, of course. But when I'm teaching them how to fall, I teach them it's an internal practice. That the defense mechanisms are going to handguns, drones, explosives, modern fighting. Okay, I'll get back to that one. I teach them that it's an inner process, that falling is our most basic fear. And it's a little bit related to what Liam is writing about handguns and drones and explosives and modern fighting, etc. Fighting, it doesn't matter. Fighting, conflict is going to bring up fear. And as long as we are in fear, we'll never be expressing like an artist. We'll always be perpetuating the past. So against handguns and drones and explosives and modern fighting, Aikido is not an art for fighting. Aikido is an art for resolving conflict. That doesn't mean that you may not have to fight or that you're going to master the way to resolve conflict. But this art, Aikido, is actually trying to help us understand that the perpetuation of conflict is the problem. Human history is nothing but one continuous stream of the perpetuation of conflict. We've evolved. We live in the best time ever, really. I mean, even with Trump, we live in the best time ever. It's the best time to be human now. But we're evolving. But conflict is still perpetuated again and again and again and again and again. Aikido is supposed to be medicine to heal a sick world. And I won't go too much into it, but it's for the perpetuation of the healing of conflict. So the principles of Aikido would have to be extrapolated or applied to all times, all situations. When you have an argument with your spouse, when you're having an argument at the shop, when if you're fighting with guns, heaven forbid, or drones or whatever, the principles are the principles. Stay centered, stay connected, listen. Conflict comes, that presses together. Inside of that point of conflict, there is energy. And if we listen to that energy, if we let that energy go the direction it wants to go, that's Aikido. The problem is that me wants to control the energy, or the other person wants to control the energy. This is Aikido in a nutshell, yeah? So we can learn all these skills, how to cut, how to do this, how to do a kotegaeshi, how to do an ikkyo, how to do whatever. We learn all those things. But really the art is through being able to kind of have this kind of spiritual warrior capacity to fully face conflict, to be centered, to be open, to be awake and aware, to listen and let that energy go where it needs to go without losing my center, without losing myself, without dominating the other person. So it's a win-win situation in principle. Okay, that's a whole nother kind of teaching, whole nother workshop. But yes, Aikido is it's not a zero-sum game. So if it helps any handguns, drones, and explosives are zero-sum. Period. So I got off track a little bit. Forgive me. But this whole idea of learning the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist. You're right. I was talking about my beginners class. I give my beginners much more the art. Because the art makes people feel alive, it makes them happy, it brings out joy. It's like, wow, okay, I get what Aikido is about. And then if they join the dojo, then they begin a little bit more learning the rules. Now, my personal approach with this learn the rules like a pro and break them out like the artist is, let's say 80-20. I give 80% rules, 20% principles, art at the beginning for the first up to third kyu. And then from third kyu, I start to kind of balance it. I don't flip it. I start to balance it out. 40-60 and then 50-50. By Shodan, they need to show the rules really clearly. But they also have to show a certain amount of artiste. By Nidan, they have to show more artists than rules. And by Sandan, they have to show a beautiful integration of rules and art. Generally speaking, that's how I work with students. And that could be 8 years, it could be 10 years, 10 years of practice. So before I finish this, I want to talk just about a few more things. Actually, one more thing. If you have any questions, you can just write them in our comments, and I'll bring those questions in. Pablo Picasso painted a dove with only one line, just like SENSEI. Yep. Okay, so Archimedes was a Greek mathematician, philosopher. From back in the day, he said many beautiful things. He said "Eureka." Anyways, he had these great. There's many quotes that we use even today, but one of the most famous things that he said is that if you give me a firm point on which to stand, and a lever long enough, I can move the world. A firm point. This is just pure physics, yeah, and it's a rule. It's a physics rule that is applicable all times, all places, and all circumstances. You have to have a firm point to stand on, and you have to have a lever long enough, and then with just a finger, boop, you can move the bloody world. Yeah, that's the law of leverage. Firm point on which to stand. Lever long enough. That's the Archimedean point. It's called an Archimedean point. In Aikido, when we are learning the rules, one way to say it is that we are learning the Archimedean point. That's why a smaller person can move a bigger person in Aikido. That's why when somebody attacks me with full power, it only takes a little bit of effort on my side to kind of resolve that attack. The Archimedean point is learning the rules like a pro, and we need to learn those rules. However, if you stay with those rules too long, that Archimedean point will soon become a trap. If you think of Bruce Lee, if anybody heard Bruce Lee's quotes, he's like, be like water, my friend. The moment you create a form, it gives you power, but it also is a trap. Something like that, he said. Carlos Castaneda, on the other hand, was another teacher, doing a lot of like peyote and maybe perhaps ayahuasca. I'm not sure what he was doing, but he's doing a lot of psychedelic drugs, Native American medicines as a spiritual path, a spiritual practice. His teacher was a teacher named Don Juan. He was a Yaqui Indian shaman. And he said that the main work that he does with people is different than Archimedes. He says that most people that come to him, their personalities, their egos, their sense of self, their history, everything is kind of assembled together along a certain point. He called it the fixation point. It's Miles, it's Matthew, it's Andy, it's Liam, it's Brita, it's Daniel, it's Aline is with us. It's everything that is us, that we identified as us, is a point. It's a point in space and time in the universe. But there's probably a good chance that it's fixated as well, that it's fixed, that it's not so flexible. My God, I don't want to lose myself. So learning the rules like a pro is really kind of getting a good sense of self, having a good Archimedean point from which to move the world. Don Juan, on the other hand, he says the work that he does with people is actually to move them off their fixation point. I believe he called it the assemblage point, the assembly point, where the ego assembles in one kind of along lines in space and time. He says that his job was to, boom, knock them off that point. And when they knocked off that point, there's a huge disorientation period, but then you actually start to experience life in a fresh new way, and you start to express yourself in a completely new way, in a way that's not based on the past, but is based on the present moment. So if you think of Aikido, learning the rules like a pro, when you practice Ikkyo, when you practice Nikkyo, when you practice Sankyo, when you practice any technique, what you are doing is you're taking something you learned in the past, you saw it 100,000 times, you did it 100,000 times, more or less, and you're doing it in the future. Excuse me. You're repeating the past in the future when you practice technique. Great. Learn the rules like a pro. Perfect them, sharpen them, make everything great. But don't forget, when you're practicing technique, you're repeating the past. That's what learning the rules like a pro. It's the Archimedean point. That's why I know I have a damn good point from which to move the world. Facebook Live, I've done this before. It's giving me power to kind of communicate to the world. That's an Archimedean point. Leverage. 18 people. I don't know how many people are going to watch the replay, but I've got some leverage to teach you. But I'm repeating the past. When we do Ikkyo, Nikkyo, Sankyo, repeating the past. Techniques are taking something from the past and repeating it in the future. When we work with principles, connection, listening, feeling, centering, grounding, staying open, channeling, aligning, expressing, allowing the energy to move through you, what's happening in the body, and responding to the needs of the energy, or the needs of the conflict, or the needs of the two friction, tension, the needs of the tension. What does this tension need to resolve itself? It needs to do that, for example. When we're doing that, we are in the present moment. And we are creating the resolution that you do in the present moment, it might be the most beautiful Ikkyo, or it might be a perfect Kotegashi. It might be something you might create a completely new technique. But we're in the present moment, and we are creating Aikido in the here and now. And there's no past, and there's no future. And what you create opens like a flower, a cherry blossom that sticks around for 3-4 days, and it floats away, and it's gone forever. It came from nowhere, from eternity. Most beautiful flower that opens up for 5 days and the wind blows and it's gone forever. The coming, the staying, the disappearing. That's art. Art is constantly in the present moment. The pictures we looked at before of Picasso, I could learn how to copy Picasso. I draw in fact, my 4-year-old daughter, she's doing amazing Picassos right now because, she did a picture of me the other day. My hair were like little balls, like I had little corn balls or something on my head or now. But she was copying Picasso. But for her, it was total new. She's reached a new level in her expression of art. So, learn the rules like a pro so you can break the rules like an artist is very similar to these two teachings. One from teaching of the Archimedean point. Give me a firm point on which to stand so I can move the world. We've got to do that in Aikido. We need our Ikkyo, Nikkyo, Samkyo. And sharpen it and, shape it, sharpen it, polish it. But we also need to break the rules like an artist. We need to get broken off of our fixation points. We need to be free expression of the art. Some schools, forgive me, some schools go straight for the art. And that's fine. It's a methodology. It's an approach. It's like, no, just get right into the connection. That's in a methodology. Other schools go straight for the technique. Let's learn the technique where you put your feet. And that's totally cool. That's a methodology. My school in Iwama, where I practiced in Japan, was much more, you learn the rules. And man, if you didn't learn the rules, there was a bokken, you got hit with the bokken. Hey, Andy, thank you. But, it was kind of old school martial arts, and I loved it. It was brutal, but it was wonderful. I loved it. But it was heavy on the rules. Saito Sensei, my teacher, where is he? I'll show you. There he is, right there, up there. Saito Sensei, my teacher, was an amazing artist. He taught more the rules, but he expressed like a bloody artist. It was incredible. My own approach these days is, as I mentioned before, I still think that we learn the rules like a pro. I go rules first and then art second, but I pepper in a lot of art at the beginning. And then as somebody gets up, I break them out of their fixations of rules, and I expect them to be more free. I expect them to be able to do their own Aikido. But that's just my particular approach. I think there's so many different ways I can do it. But if you think of a master in Aikido, I'm going to wrap this up here. It could be a Western master, from Europe or the States or South America or Australia, wherever. Asia. Basically a non-Japanese Aikido master. Think of them and kind of hold this quote. Think of them as learning the rules like a pro, being pros of the rules. And think of them as breaking the rules and expressing Aikido like an artist. You're thinking Japanese teachers, like master teachers in Japan. Think of them, think of the ones that encapsulate this quote. Which ones really sharp with the rules? Oh my God, they're so good. Such pros. And man, they have a beautiful expression. And you might see Aikidoka teachers, who are just doing art. That's all they're interested in. That's their thing, and it's totally cool. You might see teachers who are just doing rules. Also cool, it's a free world. But from my experience, that an integration of the two is what we need. Thank you all very much. I wish you the best. Have a great day, a great evening. And it's the beginning of the Sabbath here in Israel. So it's Friday night. So Shabbat Shalom to you all. Thank you.